Only journals. And after what's been a chastening few weeks, that was a remarkable game of football. Anybody who just watched the live will know that I went full football fanboy. I genuinely thought that was just an absolute pleasure to be so close to the action, in a really privileged position, and just to witness that, to see it, to sense it, to smell it, to feel it. It was just all brilliant. I've still got my gloves on here. Absolutely freezing it was out there, but you wouldn't have wanted to be anywhere else tonight. Before we come on to what really made that so positive tonight, and the performance of Newcastle United, and you know, after a week of criticism for the players, a criticism of the club, of the manager and all sorts, a little word from yourselves about the game. Dom, what did you think of that one? Are you kind of with me, or have I gone crackers and football fanboy?
No, it was a great game of football. For neutral, incredible. You said you had Manchester United fans on the live stream tuning in. I think if you're neutral, brilliant. Newcastle fan, it was pulling your hair out a little bit in the second half. Referee, I thought, had a bit of a shocker with some key decisions. I think the Isak penalty shout probably is a penalty looking at the replay, but the big one for me, blowing your whistle on 95 minutes 15 seconds when you've had a VAR check and a free kick in stoppage time, when you've added 5 minutes, is ludicrous from Andy Madley, particularly when Newcastle were on the break. If you see the still, it's 3-on-1, although Liverpool probably stopped about a few seconds beforehand.
I think they did.
But it's just, there's a sense of frustration that Newcastle didn't get the 3 points that a lot of their performance deserved, particularly in the first half. That was the best opening 45 minutes I think we've seen from Newcastle in a long time.
Created chances.
Yeah, well, I said...
Isak had a goal ruled out with sitters with Gordon and others. Yeah. It was just a game. Murphy in the second half where he went through.
Murphy should have scored.
Yeah,
I thought,
it was just a game of chances.
I said to Eddie Howe, you've had 2 shots in the opening 2-3 minutes of the game after basically not registering a shot against Crystal Palace at the weekend, and that sort of put Newcastle on the front foot. They had that intensity, but it's something we expected. Me and Jordan said in yesterday's video after the press conference, it would be no surprise, despite the previous 2 performances being so negative, if Newcastle got up for these games. These are Newcastle's bread and butter, really, under the lights, St James's Park against the big side. You'd back them to turn up, and that absolutely did tonight. It's just a frustration that they conceded 3 goals in very similar fashion, all down that Liverpool's right side. Mo Salah had a great game and almost scored an unbelievable goal as well that hit off the post.
I think you've seen it. I was almost any remaining hair that I've got, you guys will know I was pulling out at that point in the game.
You said it was going to come.
It was coming down that side when Salah just started to really come into the game.
Trent came on as well.
Yeah, it was all happening down that side. And I really wanted. I couldn't see. I'm not a tactician, but I couldn't see how he would do. But he needed to find a way of plugging that gap and just giving a little bit some more support to Lewis Hall. Who I thought in the main had a good game, but was really starting to feel it. I thought towards the end. But look, it worked out in the end. And it was a good result. I wanted to... Sorry, I don't know if you had anything to add there, but I was going to say, Jordan, I know you in the live were particularly passionate about a decision that Dom didn't mention.
I know what you're going to say, because you asked Eddie Howe about it as well.
Yeah. Well, Eddie Howe thought it was a... Well, he's actually VR looked at. So the incident was, of course, Anthony Gordon goes through 1-on-1. Should have scored, should have made it 2-0, but then... A couple of seconds after that, Anthony Gordon goes down the floor, and you see the replay, and the top of Virgil van Dijk's shoulder connects with
the side of his head.
Yeah, well, it's like lower down, I think. But as I say, Virgil van Dijk, as I said in the live, he knows what he's doing. It's really naughty.
Yeah.
And I didn't know VAR looked at where he corrected and said that VAR did look at it, but didn't feel it was anything. I asked if he was surprised by that, and he said he was. So yeah, I thought Virgil van Dijk was a very, very lucky boy. And you're playing against 10 men again. Maybe not always a good thing, as I said, when they played against 10 men last year. But
an ugly part of it, what I thought was a really beautiful game.
Yeah.
It didn't need that sort of thing, of him playing on the edge and doing that kind of thing. But look, you just don't know. It might have totally changed the balance of the game. But I thought there was a couple of needless decisions from the referee today. I thought a couple of...
Yeah, well, the key ones, as I say, the Isak penalty, the trip by Jarrell Kwanzaa, And then, as you mentioned there, Don, at the end when the referees blew, I said on the live, it was absolutely ridiculous. Madness that he blew, and there's 3 Newcastle players attacking.
Joe Buck, friend of the channel and my Shields Gazette colleague, was particularly fuming because he had money on it to be 4-3 to Newcastle.
He did.
And
It was that type of game though. They probably would have went up and done scored.
When they were lining up that free kick, we'd already planned the night out, hadn't we? We're not letting Joe Buck leave, as he's often a spectator behind the camera here and watching us rant on at some point away from home in particular. But we weren't going to let him leave because it was going to be drinks on Joe Buck.
It was, yeah. It was paying for all his Christmas presents, I think that's what he had in mind. But great game of football. I don't think either team deserved to lose. I think both teams went at it, and 3-3 was a fair result. It was justified as much as, don't want to dwell on the negatives, Palace's late equaliser was justified on Saturday. Fabian Schär's late equaliser, although the keeper will be very disappointed with it, was more than deserved tonight.
But that just sort of, the whole thing, like that's what made tonight so special for me, that there was so much jeopardy and so much drama, and there were errors laced with absolute quality, but 2 teams just determined to win a game of football, both defensively shaky at times, both looked like they could get caught on the break. By the same token, both looked like they put the ball in the back of the net. I thought the game just had everything. And I even thought the little incidents, the referee's mistakes, just built that
That's
sense.
the drama.
It did. It really did. I honestly, and I don't know if I'm going over the top here, but I thought it was a genuine, particularly this season, a real classic.
Yeah.
I haven't seen every Premier League game of football. I think I'd be mad to do it. I don't think there's enough hours in the day. But I've seen it quite a few games, most of the major games that you see on Sky, etc., BT or TNT or whatever it's called these days. But I think that to me is the game that stood out by some distance.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything as close. I haven't just watched Liverpool do what they did to Manchester City on Sunday. For Newcastle to really go toe to toe. This wasn't a David v Goliath game out there for 90 minutes.
No.
This was 2 teams who both had good quality, who both could hurt each other and did hurt each other regularly in the game. I thought it was a really refreshing game of football, and I'm interested. You guys were both in the press conference. I think a lot of people out here will be interested too. I've been in this ground in press conferences numerous times when Jurgen Klopp's been the Liverpool manager, and I always thought you got a sense from being so close behind the dugout of what he was like. I thought Arne Slot was a refreshing change.
He had a few moments when he was kicking off the referee.
What was he like? What was he like down here? What was he like?
I thought he was
Fine.
quite polite.
He gave a lot of credit to Newcastle.
Yeah.
He went Alexander Isak's goal, whoa, what a strike.
Yeah.
Which it was, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, Alexander Isak, shout out to him, because
Sensational.
doubt before the game. He was a knock on Saturday against Palace. He said he was fine on Monday. Eddie Howe tried to
That's why I'm laughing.
make it more
Yeah.
of a doubt than it was, but I thought he did everything tonight. He was brilliant, took his goal brilliantly, but from a creative standpoint as well, he created 4 big chances for his teammates, got 1 assist, probably could have had more if the likes of Lewis Hall, Anthony Gordon were more ruthless.
What's that?
850, Jordan.
I don't have to cut that rocket.
Don't. It was just somebody coming in the room when we did live.
And
It's
he's-
absolutely fine.
Slowly shutting the door.
We're actually we're invading into their space,
Yes.
so we
To
can't
be fair,
complain
we
if
did
anybody
well
comes in.
not to get told off.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
thought we were
classic
gonna get wrong.
gesture from Newcastle United's media team.
Yeah. Mark Hannon,
Yes.
shout out.
Yes.
Thank you for letting the Geordie Journals slide with this, sneaking into the little room where we are and making ourselves look like we're on a match day interview. But the sponsors will like it.
I know.
It's a big day for Fennec, Seller, Sportbet.io,
I can't
InPost. Massive day for Saudia to be involved in the Geordie
I
Journals.
can't believe you just called it Fennec. My life's been a lie. I used to call it Phoenix.
I know.
But
I know.
it
And
is
we all
Fennec.
do. We all do.
Yeah, everyone calls it Phoenix, but
Yeah.
yeah. And don't forget Four Rivers Financial Planning as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, you see them on there,
They're on
Connie.
there somewhere. aren't they?
They're in the corner, off screen. Or the right
Charlie's
in the
pulled the
middle.
big bucks out and he's putting it up on Newcastle's ground. I don't think that's going to happen. Anyway,
It's a blow, lad.
it's a blow. Yeah, PSR blow. Right. Look, I think the one thing that I took from that as well, before we dig a little deeper, as we always do on these things, dig a little deeper and look at the wider context of what this game meant, what it meant from what we've seen previously and what we're going to see potentially at the weekend. But the one thing I want to say before we walk away from the game itself, is it was really nice to see Newcastle United land a counter punch on Liverpool and actually come from behind and not lose, just not lose the game.
It felt like history repeating itself, didn't it? When Mo Salah scores that goal late on, there's only maybe 10 minutes left. Yeah. And you go, it's happening again.
And they're not going to come back. And they didn't let their heads drop. And they kept going and going. And even when they scored, the mentality from me was like, what we have, we hold.
You see that
they were not. They grabbed the ball, they sprinted back, put it down and they were like, we want to win this football match. And honestly, it was so refreshing to see. And considering how almost negative and deflated the players looked after what they'd produced themselves on Saturday, it was such a change. And it was really refreshing to see. But what does this mean? Jordan, I'm coming to you first. What does this mean in the wider context? Have you talk about this a lot today. Have we learned anything about Newcastle United tonight from what we've just seen? Or was this kind of what you expected?
So I mean, look, they showed a real fighting spirit tonight, and that's what they are. That is Newcastle at the best, but we don't say that every week. We see that against Manchester City, we see that against Liverpool, we see that against Tottenham, we see that against Arsenal. You don't see that against Crystal Palace, you don't see that against West Ham. So that's the challenge. I mean, I said on the video yesterday, I said regardless of the result tonight, you won't learn anything new, and I would probably stick to that, albeit I want to really praise what I've seen out there because it was an excellent game of football. Newcastle played really, really well. But that for me means absolutely nothing if Newcastle go and get beat at Brentford on Saturday or get beat badly or put in a bad performance at Brentford on Saturday. They need to take that into the rest of the season, and that's a challenge. And if they go up and down again, then that's not benefiting anyone. So I think Saturday is massive now. I think they've got to show that they can produce that week in, week out.
Dom, do you think, to take that a little bit further, do you think we've learned anything about Eddie Howe tonight? Because he's taken some. We've been people who've critiqued the performances not only of the players, the team, but also Eddie Howe himself, and said, can we expect more? A lot of his answers, we talked about it on this. Regular watchers of the Geordie Journals will know that we talked about his answers in the press conference, which we found slightly baffling at times. And one of the ones that sticks in my head was that it was almost the suggestion that what we're doing works, so we'll just keep doing the same thing. But then he went against that, didn't he, in the press conference that you guys were at Benton on Friday, where he said that's not the case. I thought there was evidence that he was right and that they did do things differently. The thing that stood out for me, I know this is probably the longest question you've ever faced in your life, Dom, but I thought they went man for man, things like that. They went man for man with Liverpool's midfield, which we've never seen before.
It's the best we've seen of Newcastle's midfield this season, I thought, and Eddie Howe made the change. He brought Joe Linton back in, who I thought was brilliant, off the ball, winning it back, maybe lacked a bit of quality, finding that final pass in the final third. Sandro Tonali continued his really promising display at Palace, where he was probably the best of Newcastle's front six, as we said. In that six role, he's actually finding a bit of a home. And then Bruno, pushing further forward, gets 2 assists tonight. It's the most creative output we've seen from him this season. So yeah, those little tweaks. In Jacob Murphy coming back into the side, which probably wasn't a popular decision when we saw the team sheet as such, it just brings out Anthony Gordon back on the left, who looked, I wouldn't say miles more confident, but was tireless down that left-hand side, and that's probably one of his best performance as a left winger this season. Yeah. And then Jacob Murphy just offers a bit of natural balance and probably should have scored. Look, we know what Jacob Murphy is, and I thought today the changes Eddie Howe made to midfield, bringing Murphy into the side, all of them worked and saw Newcastle put in a much improved display, which would back them to do, because at the end of the day, as much as the previous 2 games were terrible, Newcastle are still a good side with world-class players in it. It's just finding that consistency, which will always be an issue. And as Jordan said, you'd back them any day of the week against Liverpool or top side who are going to come at them, because counter-attack, the pace, the way players can find space, they can hurt teams. It's the Brentfords next, Leicester, Ipswich, these next 3 games before Christmas, which you really is the difference between Newcastle being in and around where they are at the moment and actually really challenging at the top of the league, which 2 years ago they did. They wiped those teams away and also took points against the likes of, well, maybe not Liverpool, let's stop the rot, but against the likes of Man City, Manchester United, Arsenal. They won those games.
I think it feels like, I feel like I've done this video many times before. I feel like I've said this time and time again. Someone else wants to be on the Geordie Journals.
You should just ask.
They're all coming on. We can take guests. Anybody want to be a guest on the Geordie Journals, do jump on. No, I was going to say, I feel like I've said this before. I feel like I've done this video many times before where we've looked at a game like that and we've been positive, and rightfully so, and then it's never been developed on. It's flash in the pan. Look, it was 3 games last time.
Yeah.
It was 3 games of solid performance, and it was 2 real dip.
It's 1 loss in 6.
It is, and look, if you want to look at it that way, that's fine. But I think that paper's over the
But
cracks.
before-
It does some of the
No, but
performances,
I think
doesn't
you
it?
actually, I don't know, I'm going to steal your thunder, but you actually called it early on when it was actually that first half in particular put shame on the last 2 performances
It
he's
did.
put in. That's the way you can play, and you put in a dreadful second half against West Ham and a dreadful 90 minutes against Crystal Palace, and then you come up against
It's frustrating,
Liverpool and rattle them at parts in that first
Liverpool
half.
were really rattled in that half, yeah.
Yeah. The worst part of the first half was the fact Newcastle weren't further in front.
Yeah, I would say so. So for me, yeah, there is a sense of frustration in that. Like we've seen evidence of what this team can be today, and we've seen what this team can be against Arsenal. We've seen what this team can be against Manchester City. They've shown they can do this, and that's the most frustrating part about it, is that they've not shown anything close to that in games against Wolves, which they actually ended up winning.
Mm-hmm.
Brighton, where they lost.
Played very well against
Brighton
Brighton.
and Everton were possibly slightly different. So Brighton and Everton were games where they dominated and didn't take chances.
Yeah.
The real dips were, I thought Wolves were really poor. I thought they were really poor.
away.
Forest in the Cup earlier this season. They limped along in some of these games, and recent ones, the last 2, that last half hour against West Ham was down there as one of the most shambolic half an hours of football that we've seen at St James's Park in quite some time, particularly under Eddie Howe. I would say hasn't been many like that. But for me, it's can they do that? We've said this before. I think we've beaten Arsenal here, and I've probably said the same thing. Like, and you guys have probably repeated the same thing. Like, now you've got to go and do it again, and you've got to go and do it again. And if you're not going to keep doing it again, then we're always going to be having these videos where it's like roll it back. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. That's all it's ever felt. But at least by getting that result today, because I tend to look at the next few and say, yes, they're on paper winnable games. The way Newcastle have been playing, really, over the course of the season, they look actually quite tricky. Going to a place like Brentford, who've got a fantastic home record. They haven't played any of the top teams, I don't think, at home this season, but they've got a really good home record. And Newcastle United have always gone there, and we always kind of feel that they might get beat here today, and they never have. They've always gone there and performed really well, scored goals down at Brentford as well. So fingers crossed they'll do that again, but they need that kind of performance. Going to Ipswich, I mean, if you're a negative fan and you look at it and you go, got the feel of looting that from last season, hasn't it? It's the same game, same time of year, newly promoted side, tough place to go. But look, if Newcastle ain't got any real ambitions of grasping this season and taking control of their own destiny, they're going to have to start winning these games. And what I've seen tonight is, I've seen a group of lads who were all fighting for each other. Every single one of them players out there put in 120%. You couldn't ask any more. After that 120 minutes of football, which was utter rubbish, being brutally honest,
It was.
for them to put in that today filled me full of hope and heart, that it was a bunch of lads who were fighting for each other, a bunch of lads who were fighting for the manager, a bunch of lads who were fighting for the crowd as well, and they really put pride on the badge after probably letting themselves down, I think, for the 120 minutes before that. So I take a lot of heart from that. I'm not saying they're going to go and become the most consistent team ever. They're almost consistent in their inconsistencies. And I do wonder, is this Newcastle United? Is this what they are? And can they do it at home? Can they go to Brentford and reproduce that? Possibly not. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope they do that, because that's the only way this team progresses. The league is wide open. It will balance out. I think by the time we get to January and we're talking about FA Cup games, then I think we'll probably have a better idea of where they're going to be.
You see the likes of Chelsea and stuff now as well. They're finding form.
Chelsea are good. Chelsea have got good players. They always had good players, and they signed good players, and they've got good depth. Chelsea could almost pick 3 teams that would compete in the Premier League. It's that they've got that much depth, given the strength of their academy as well. They probably could pick 3 teams that would compete. Like, they'd probably pick a youth team that would compete with the likes of Ipswich and Southampton, wouldn't they? Realistically,
I always forget your love for Chelsea.
I know, yeah. You act like the greatest team of all time.
I don't know why. Why do I do that?
They're the most successful team of the 21st century.
Well,
I think
They're incredible.
2 Champions Leagues.
I've got him on board now.
Sorry, I interrupted you there, sorry.
You've been on the board,
I've been on the board. That's why I love Chelsea, because they made me feel so welcome by putting us on the big board in Stamford Bridge. Yeah. I'm sure, Dom, if you can find it, or Jordan, whoever's editing this video, I'm sure you can find that picture.
I'll try.
Show everybody out.
Yeah, it's on me, this one. So, put over the screen now.
Right, what I'm going to do now, before we move on to anything else, any further business, I'm going to quickly mention 4Us Financial Planning. They're not on the board, but they would like to be, I'm sure. They are the real sponsors of Geordie Journals. All long form videos and short form videos, everything that we do. Any holistic financial advice, particularly in the field of pensions, if you need it, all the details are down there below. I'm sure it'll be on the screen around about now as well. Do like, comment, share, subscribe for all your Geordie Journals content. There is a bell you can click and it'll get on any device that you need. Don't worry, I am going on to talk about further things after this. This isn't the end. This is not the end of the Geordie Journals. There is also a store. It's coming up for Christmas. It's December. You might be thinking, what am I going to get such and such for Christmas? I don't know what I'm going to get Dom for Christmas. I've got no idea. But I was thinking, could I get him a Geordie Journals coaster? Or could I just Dom, just Jordan?
I'm not getting a present.
Maybe. Does he need a Geordie Journals hoodie in his life?
Yes.
You love a hoodie.
I do.
Oh, brilliant.
So
yeah.
I think
I'm getting a short story. Yeah, I'm getting a coaster.
You're getting a couple. I'm getting a hoodie. Seems fair.
I'll get you a couple of cups.
We should do Secret Santa between the three.
Secret Santa.
We should. But if you do need anything like that, you just look for a stocking filler or anything like that. There is a Geordie Journals store. That might seem ludicrous, but there is a good fan base out there, and if you do want to, do jump in the store. Right. Any further business, lads, with regards to that game, the context? I don't think we got to the bottom of the what did we learn about Eddie Howe tonight. Where does he stand? Because there have been a lot of people criticising Eddie Howe, and rightfully so in some respects. But there's been a lot of debate this week about, his future and all this kind of thing. Where do you guys stand on where the things sit at the moment in that regard?
The debate?
Yeah.
Well, we touched on it yesterday in our video. I don't like this idea of you have to be in this camp or that camp.
Yeah.
And tonight proved it, because Newcastle are so inconsistent game by game that I think Eddie Howe's shown he can set a team up. The players are playing for him still and can compete with the very best teams in the Premier League. Liverpool far and away the best team we've seen this season. Newcastle went toe to toe with them. It's the sort of consistency from Eddie Howe or inconsistency from Eddie Howe and his team that's been an issue. And I think you can't really, in my opinion, be super Howe out or Howe in, because it's been so up and down. But I guess some people are wanting more.
Well, there will be some people out there who just will not be convinced no matter what they're seeing. They think he's not the man. We need to change. Yes. There'll also be some people who almost have that blind faith where it's like it will work and continue working again. I tend to see myself right down the middle, as in that I
on the fence.
Yeah, and I think it's not an unhealthy place to be at the moment.
Probably the healthiest place to be.
Yeah, because of that reason that there is enough there to think that it isn't a lost cause. For example, we're not looking at a manager where it looks like a lost cause. We've all seen it before. We've all lived it before in Newcastle United. It isn't that. So that would be when you'd look to be saying, can they make a change? Can they not? I think the players evidenced that tonight by putting in a real performance and look like they're playing for each other, for the badge and for the manager and for the fans as well. So I think that is enough to convince. But it might not be enough to convince.
No, I think some people have made their mind up. That's fair enough.
And that's also fair. Everybody's entitled to an opinion. That's what I always think. And that's one thing, I don't know if I've ever said it on these videos, maybe I have, maybe I haven't. But I think that's the one thing that really frustrates the life out of me about social media, is that there isn't...
Opinions are called out.
Yeah, it's so polarised. Like, you've either got to be one or the other, and that's what you're hinting at. You don't have to be one or the other. You can look at the manager and say, I don't think what you've just produced is good enough. Or, I think what you've produced is good enough. And it doesn't mean you're out or in if you say those things. Yeah. It doesn't have to be so polarising. And then I don't know why people have got to almost nail their colours to the mast so much that if anybody chooses to say, I really like what Eddie Howe's done there, that the person has got to say... But no, he's not good enough. He's not going to take me to where I want to go. What about this? What about that? And by the same token, flip it round the reverse. if anybody says anything about I didn't like what I saw or critique, as we did in the last video, oh, you're going at the manager and you're how out.
You're making it personal.
It's not.
Come on.
There is no need to be personal in this. I don't have a personal problem. Eddie Howe could go and lose the next 20 games at Newcastle United. I don't have a personal problem with Eddie Howe, and I'm certain that you guys don't either.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's essentially just judging. Eddie Howe could read every article that I've written for publications that I've worked for in the past, and he might critique my work and say, I don't like what you do. It's not personal, you just don't like my work. It's very much the same thing as what you see from a manager.
Yeah.
Whether that be Rafa Benitez, Steve Bruce, who I've been lucky enough to go through time here and cover this football club when they've been here, for better, for worse.
Lucky, yeah.
You're the first person.
Graham Jones as well. Graham Jones. I've been lucky enough to
Lucky man.
to go through that. And then I think Eddie Howe really, in his time at Newcastle United, 3.5 years now, isn't it? 3 and a bit years. He's largely been a breath of fresh air in his approach and his mannerisms and everything that he does. Do I think he's the perfect manager? No. I don't think. I'm yet to come across. The closest I've come across is Pep Guardiola until he started doing all that scratching thing, which definitely concerned us. I thought he was perfect. I don't think he is anymore. So look, and Jurgen Klopp, for example, Arne Slot's, most Liverpool fans would think, how do you replace the great Jurgen Klopp? Arne Slot's come in and taken them on a level with the same players, by the way. And that's where this argument about not adding and not Liverpool didn't add anybody in the summer. He's taken the same squad with all the same players, and he's just slightly changed things. It can be done. New thinking and new voices can change things. So I can see from every angle that I don't, there's been plenty of arguments this week. I just think the polarising and the want for antagonism and to criticise others, let's just have healthy debate. I'm all for it. Like I said, jump on the live, say anything you want to me. Jump on Twitter. You guys always joke about how active I am on Twitter at times. When I get a bee in me bonnet, I do tend to go.
Yeah.
And obviously I love talking to everyone in the comments, but just keep it clean. Keep it clean. The Geordie Journals, we keep it clean, don't we?
We try.
Yeah. We're now getting kicked out. We're done.
You're done?
Yeah, virtually. Well, not quite, but are we stopping you getting in your cupboard here?
Sorry.
Right. On that note, shall we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. It's good night from St James's Park. Good night from the Geordie Journals. Do check out all the links below. Everything you need to find is down there. Like, comment, share, subscribe for all your Geordie Journals content.